Mortal Kombat is a franchise that wears its inspirations on its sleeve, whether it's real history, ancient mythology, or pop culture. But what Mortal Kombat may take the most from are movies, and there are three that really stand out as the foundation that crafted Mortal Kombat into what it was. And today I will be covering what exactly it was from these films that MK took from, as well as my thoughts on them as movies. Hello my fellow oddities, and welcome to my breakdown of the movies that inspired Mortal Kombat, Enter the Dragon, Bloodsport, and Big Trouble in Little China. Spoilers for all three of these films, you have been warned. Enter the Dragon, released in 1973, directed by Robert Claus and starring the one and only Bruce Lee. The film follows Lee, and I'm not just referring to Bruce Lee by his last name, his character's name is literally just Lee, as he is sent to a mysterious island for a martial arts tournament hosted by a man named Han, who's using this tournament as a cover-up for his drug-dealing operation, whose gang is also responsible for the death of Lee's sister. Lee also happens to be a Shaolin monk and master martial artist. Seriously, I think he takes less than 10 hits in this movie, and most of those are from the main villain. Along the way, Lee meets a cast of colorful characters, a gambling-addicted white man named Roper, a cool and stylish black man named Williams, Han's bodyguard and the man who attacked his sister, O'Hara, and a thick boy named Bolo who just bodies everyone. So immediately you can probably tell the similarities between Enter the Dragon and Mortal Kombat just from the plot synopsis, and after watching the movie, yeah, it's just Mortal Kombat, straight up. Let's start with Bruce Lee, who obviously inspired Liu Kang, everyone knows that, but particularly it's his character in this movie that Liu Kang takes the most from, a Shaolin monk that is unlike the others with his flowing black hair rather than shaved head, a man that wants to both win the tournament but also uncover and defeat the evil behind it. The 1995 movie Liu Kang even has an additional similarity with the sibling who was killed by the main villain. And it's also Bruce Lee's look in this movie, particularly at the end when he takes off his shirt, that was directly translated into Liu Kang's MK 1992 appearance. But moving on from that, Han, the main villain of the film, is literally just Shang Tsung. I mean, there's a scene where they're at this grand dinner after they all arrive at the island, Han walks in and everyone just goes silent. It's so Shang Tsung coded. And just in all his scenes, whether he's watching over the fights, murdering one of the main characters, or running from Lee at the end of the film, you can really see where both the games and especially the movies of Mortal Kombat took from this performance by Shi Kin. And although his iconic claw hand is not really brought over to any actual Mortal Kombat character, it is one of the customization options in Armageddon's Creative Fighter, so that's neat. Then there are the story similarities, which are just abundant. The main characters meet for the first time on a boat to a mysterious island owned by the host of the tournament. When they first arrive, there's a large dinner to celebrate the beginning of the tournament, which begins the next day, and the main characters all win their fights, but ultimately it's the Shaolin monk who ends up on top, and in a last-ditch effort, the main villain tries to run away, but is stopped by that Shaolin monk. That is literally the story of Mortal Kombat. Now, of course, there are parts I'm leaving out when it comes to the specifics. Lee in this movie is more of a spy rather than a regular member of the tournament that Liu Kang is, and obviously the stakes are much lower with the fate of Earth not being on the line, but regardless, it's kind of crazy watching this movie and getting so many MK vibes, even besides just Bruce Lee and the tournament plot. Getting into some other characters, Roper, played by the legend John Saxon, aka Nancy's dad in Nightmare on Elm Street, really reminded me of Johnny Cage. He's not as similar to him as some of the other characters from other films we'll get to, but just the kinda down on his luck, unexpectedly skilled white American in the middle of a bunch of Asian people gives sort of the same effect as Johnny. There's also a character in the movie named Mei Ling, and this may be a little bit of a stretch, but if you switch those names around, it's Ling Mei, which kinda sounds like Lee May to me. I don't know, just saying. Also, the O'Hara character really reminded me of Kano, not sure why. I think he just kind of looks similar to the MK 2021 Kano. He too gets bodied and flawless victoried by the Bruce Lee character, but really what MK took from with this character is the eye scar that would be given to Sub-Zero in MK3. And then there's my personal favorite character of the film, Bolo, a giant man who just runs through every contender up until he gets to Roper. And again, this may be a stretch, but this dude really reminded me of Goro. Both are brutes and also the main villain star combatant, and if the Roper and Johnny Cage connection is also right, that would give another similarity between this movie and the 1995 MK film. Also, come on, Bolo and Goro, those are like 2 letters away from being the exact same thing. And just as a movie, I really enjoyed this. Is it some masterpiece in cinema or storytelling? Not really, it's nothing too complicated, a very simple plot, and it can get quite silly at times. But that's more than made up for by the performances, fight scenes, and just how much iconic stuff is in it. I mean, as an MK fan, there's obviously stuff to point at, but there are some lines of dialogue in this movie that are some of the most iconic in the history of talking.
Don't think. Feel.
And the fight scenes are really a breath of fresh air after all this time and modernizations have passed. Is it the most intense, brutal, high-paced action we've ever seen? No, but it's authentic and very artistic. And that's kind of how I describe this overall movie. It's not something that's going to challenge your ideals or philosophy or anything, but it's just very genuine as a pure martial arts movie that really paved the way for those types of films to be successful. So I give Enter the Dragon an 8 out of 10, would recommend. Bloodsport, released in 1988, directed by Newt Arnold and starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. The movie follows Frank Dukes, a US soldier who was trained as a boy in the ways of ninjutsu as he leaves the military to join the Kumite, a martial arts tournament where you must fight until someone's either knocked out or quits, which was illegal in 1988, but not anymore. But with his abrupt absence from the military, two agents along with a local police officer attempt to track down and arrest Dukes, preventing him from competing. From there, the movie is a pretty typical martial arts tournament film where you watch some fights, there's a couple chase sequences where Dukes is escaping from being captured, near the end his friend is defeated and badly injured by the reigning champ Chong Li, and in the finals, Dukes and Li face off. Yeah, this movie is ass. Straight buns. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I know there are unks in the comments that'll be upset because they grew up with the movie or watched it when it came out, but I'm sorry, it just doesn't age well. The acting is pretty terrible, particularly from the main star, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I would feel bad for saying that, but yeah. Oof. There are so many corny scenes of overacting, underacting, bad music choices, montages, unnecessary slow-mo. It's just a very campy movie that doesn't really have anything of substance to make up for it. Even the fight scenes, which from a movie called Bloodsport that's rated R I was kinda hyped for, aren't that good at all. Not as memorable as Enter the Dragon, or the next movie we'll get into, which isn't even a martial arts movie. Bad look. Like there's this one training scene near the beginning where Dukes is training with his old master Tanaka for the Kumite, and I saw so many people glazing it online, but it was just super lame to me. I don't know. Maybe I don't get the motivational spirit behind it, but I was just like, what the hell am I watching? But when it comes to inspiring Mortal Kombat, what does this movie have? Well, it's kind of weird to say because depending on how you look at it, this is either the least influential movie to MK or the most of the three. When it comes to what's actually in the movie, there's a tournament that's to the death, kind of, and it's owned by the Black Dragon Fighting Society, which obviously inspired the name of the Black Dragon in Mortal Kombat, and then there's Jean-Claude Van Damme himself, who inspired Johnny Cage. But that's it, I didn't really get any MK vibes watching the movie. Van Damme's character isn't even really that similar to Johnny. I mean, yeah, he looks just like him, his outfit is the exact same, just with a yellow sash instead of red, master martial artist, great kicks, and he even does the nut punch. But personality-wise, Johnny is a much more interesting and charismatic character. But then you get to how this movie basically created Mortal Kombat. Originally, after this film, Midway was going to make a Jean-Claude Van Damme video game, but when that project fell through, it got turned into Mortal Kombat, with Johnny Cage being the remnant of that original concept. Now, the game wasn't set out to be a Bloodsport game specifically, but considering how this movie is kind of the landmark film of Jean-Claude's career, and only released a few years prior to whenever MK would have started production, you can kind of put the pieces in place. So yeah, it's a weird one to place in that regard. Do you go with what the contents of the film inspired, or what the actual film in the real world inspired? I'll let you guys decide in the comments down below. But the main takeaway should be that this movie is not very good at all. I will say my favorite part about it was the main villain, the reigning Kumite champion Chong Li, and what's interesting is he's actually played by the same actor as Bolo, which is also the actor's name, Bolo Young, from Enter the Dragon, a very similar character. But he just has a great performance in this where he doesn't even have that many lines of dialogue, but just hams it up with his facial acting to where he's the most enjoyable thing to watch in this movie, which in my opinion doesn't have much to enjoy. And I also found it really interesting that Forrest Whitaker is in this movie. I have never seen that man in a movie where he looks so young, so I don't know, that's kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to cover with this movie since it's very simple and in terms of what's in it, didn't have a huge impact on Mortal Kombat. However, its very existence I'm very glad about, since MK probably wouldn't have existed either without it. But as a movie, I'm sorry unks, I'm giving Bloodsport a 3 out of 10, and I wouldn't really recommend it either. Maybe if you have drinks and friends. Of which I have neither. Big Trouble in Little China, released in 1986, directed by the legend of The Thing and Halloween fame, John Carpenter, and starring Kurt Russell. The movie follows Jack Burton, who wins a bet with his friend Wang Chi. To ensure he gets paid, he follows Wang to the airport where he is to meet his fiancée Miao Yin. However, they get caught in a scuffle with members of the gang, the Lords of Death, resulting in Miao Yin being kidnapped. Jack and Wang follow the gang into Chinatown where shit starts going down, and this is the only movie of the three to feature the mystical elements MK is known for. They encounter the three storms, thunder, rain, and lightning, as well as Lo Pan. Jack and Wang do escape this scuffle and manage to locate where Miao Yin is being held, but she is stolen by the three storms and brought to Lo Pan, who is the main villain of the film, aiming to marry a woman with green eyes to break his ancient curse that left him without a body. Miao Yin has green eyes, so he plans to marry her, along with another woman named Gracie Law, also having green eyes, who got captured trying to help save Miao. Jack, Wang, and the others they met along the way interrupt the wedding and stop Lo Pan and the three storms. So, directed by John Carpenter. Good movie. Yeah, I think I can say that. But in terms of Mortal Kombat influence, as I said, the movie really inspired the more mystical elements of MK rather than the tournament martial arts stuff that the other two movies did. Let's start with the most obvious thing, the three storms. Firstly, one of them has rain powers and is named Rain. Might not be intentional since Rain was more so based on Prince, but something to point out. But of course, these three inspired the look and powers of our beloved god of thunder, Raiden. The hat, the way the lightning powers look and function, it's Raiden all the way. Then there's Lo Pan, who inspired the look and feel of Shang Tsung. Even though Han from Enter the Dragon likely matches the role a bit better of the villainous tournament host, you can't deny Lo Pan looks much more like Shang Tsung and has those mystical abilities as a sorcerer. He even has a form where he's an old man and looks just like the Shang Tsung we see in MK 1992. Then there's some of the more subtle stuff, such as Jack Burton being an inspiration for Johnny Cage. Sure, Jean-Claude obviously has the exact look and action style down, but Jack Burton has much more of Johnny's personality, kind of that Han Solo asshole who doesn't care, but then starts to care. And how his relationship plays out with Gracie Law is very similar to how Johnny's relationship with Sonya plays out. At first he's flirty, she can't stand him, but eventually they fall in love. Kind of.
God, aren't you even gonna kiss her goodbye?
No.
And there are some smaller things as well. When Jack and Wang get captured, they are given red blindfolds, which look very similar to Kenshi's blindfold, and one of the three storms near the end of the film gets so angry he expands like a balloon and explodes, which Bo Raicho also does in his Deception Harakiri. But as a film, I said earlier this is obviously a good movie, but how good exactly? Well, I wouldn't call it one of John Carpenter's best, but it's a solid, fun time. I think fun is the best way to describe it. It doesn't take itself too seriously, it honestly borders on comedy or parody at times, and the world building is great with the amount of creatures, powers, and crazy mystical shit. Even though it's not a focus like the other two, the action and martial arts is quite good. It's the most traditional Hollywood fight scenes out of the three, so if you enjoy that style rather than the more artistic ones, this movie's for you. I think all the performances are really good too, Kurt Russell as Jack Burton being my standout, since his dynamic with really everyone he talks to just elevates the enjoyment of this movie. The dude is so charismatic, he could talk to a wooden plank and it'd be fun. If I had to criticize the film, I'd say it can be a bit hard to follow at times. There's a lot of scenes introducing completely new, wacky concepts, random things will just happen, and you have to kind of just adjust your perspective of whatever the hell's happening constantly. And my other thing is that while all the characters are performed well and are fairly likable, I wish they had gotten a little more development. Other than Gracie Law, Wang Chi, and Jack Burton, I can't really remember the names, motivations, or just personalities of the other characters, and they feel kinda unsubstantial. But overall, I'd say Big Trouble in Little China is a cracking time, especially if you're a Mortal Kombat fan. It has just enough of its own flair while also having enough Mortal Kombat isms to where you can be satisfied with it as a movie, but also appreciate what it would come to inspire. I will give Big Trouble in Little China a 7.5 out of 10. I would recommend. So here are the results of the three films. You can see I quite liked Enter the Dragon and Big Trouble in Little China. Bloodsport not so much. And I think that goes for both as a movie critic and also an MK fan wanting to watch something that resembles it. Enter the Dragon is literally just an MK movie, and Big Trouble in Little China, while it doesn't have the same story, it has such similar characters and powers that it feels like it could be a spin-off set in the same universe. Bloodsport, though, just doesn't have much to offer, at least for me. There are plenty of other martial arts movies much better than it. Hell, I think MK 1995 is a better movie, like as a film, than Bloodsport. Not sure if that's a hot take. But that, of course, is just my opinion. You let me know yours on all 3 of these films in the comments down below. Subscribe and leave a like if you want, and that's wraps on this one, my fellow oddities. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.